Please comment on Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's immigration policy to bring in over 1,000 people from Gaza.
So the stats on the Palestinians in Gaza, a bit better than the West Bank, but over 90% of them, around 90% of them support Hamas. Around, what is it, 75% of Palestinians support the October 7th attacks. So best case scenario, let's say half, like at least 50, we're importing it best case scenario, 500 Hamas supporters. This will bring 500 people who will increase the amount of chaos and anti-Semitism and violence on our streets. It's also like nonsensical. Like, listen, if we want to import Palestinians here into the West, and this is our one goal, okay, fine. But we also have our foreign policy cadre, which is slamming the Israelis. I mean, yeah, you might not like small trick and Ben Giver, okay, but the Israelis, about 83% of the Israeli public supports the voluntary relocation of Gaza. So voluntary is a key word. This isn't ethnic cleansing. This is Gazans who want to leave Gaza should be allowed to leave Gaza. This is sort of what the Israelis are starting to say, is the ones who want to leave should be allowed to leave, which is what it always has been. And by the polling data done by Palestinian radical, terrorist sympathizers themselves, estimated about 1 million Gazans just don't want to be in Gaza anymore. They want out. They don't want to live under Hamas rule. They're done with this. They just want to go somewhere else. And the Israelis are basically saying, okay, those people should be allowed to go. Like, why do they have to stay here in Gaza if they don't want to be here? We don't want them here. They don't want to be there. They should be allowed to leave. But the world is calling this ethnic cleansing. Anyone who leaves Gaza voluntarily is being ethnically cleansed. So if we're taking 1,000 Palestinians, immigrants, like, either say this is legitimate immigration, and this is the choice of these civilians. Okay, fine, if we're going to do that, but then don't turn around and hector the Israelis and say if they allow these Palestinians to leave, this is ethnic cleansing. So this is putting the Israelis in a no-win scenario, which means you're not going to get anything done for anyone. Because if you see this, 1,000 Palestinians, this is such a humanitarian move, but at the same time, you can't be accepting these refugees and then saying, well, this is actually an act of ethnic cleansing. Because then the Israelis are not going to help facilitate this. If they're going to get slammed at the International Criminal Court, if they're going to have their aid messed with because of this, they're going to get pissed off. And this is again, it's showing bad long-term thinking on the West's part. The aid that Israel get militarily, we all say, oh, why does Israel have weapons and we don't have healthcare here? Blah 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 blah. It's Americans, but the Israelis signed on to this thing because the Americans leveraged them into saying, okay, shut down your domestic manufacturing, munitions manufacturing, and you'll be able to get weapons from us, and we have to pay all to the American defense contractors. So Israeli munitions is not where it needs to be, and the Americans aren't giving them the aid that they promised they would get if they took down their aid factories, because there's a Hamas caucus in the Democratic Party that doesn't want Israel to win the war. So now you could say, oh, it's just the Jews, but there are other countries too who are going to look at this and say, why would I ever be an ally of America? If I'm an ally of America and they give me a guarantee, but the guarantee is subject to the whims of lunatics within the Democrat or the Republican Party, I'd rather get a guarantee from China or Russia, because they will give me weapons when I ask for weapons if we have a weapons treaty. And this is dangerous because you don't want countries falling under the sphere of China and Russia. And if you want to keep them under your sphere of influence, you actually have to honor your commitments. So we're seeing, a full-on breakdown of reasonable foreign policy over the last however many years. And it's, again, the more you destabilize your own countries, the more chaos you're going to see globally. And you cannot defeat the Russians, the Iranians, or the Chinese with wishful thinking. You actually have to deal in reality. You have to look at these countries for the rogue actors they are and what their motivations are. And you have to find ways to leverage Western power and influence to stop them. And if you don't do that, which we are not doing that, we've never really done that for the last 4 years, you're going to see increasing chaos. So that's where we are, unfortunately.
What are the potential consequences of this policy for people like me or for people who doesn't know anything about the war?
I've tried to explain to people over my career that foreign policy actually affects domestic policy, and there's domestic policy that impacts foreign policy. You cannot split these two. The way people think, right? We have this new strain of isolationism. It's more popular in America. It's coming to Canada, where we think if we just ignore the world and put our head in the sand, the world will leave us alone. Well, it's not the way things work, right? There are trade agreements, there are all this. We've talked about, again, grain supplies from Ukraine could be annexed by the Russians. That would hurt Western food supplies. This would give the Russians leverage over us. They could then, without economic leverage, they could increase the price of oil, cause domestic chaos. I mean, the ultimate answer to this, the quick answer, if you just want a short, like, what does it mean to me? Bad foreign policy will eventually increase prices, right? It causes chaos and destabilization. The more destabilized the world is, right? If there's bigger shipping costs, right? If things can't go through the Red Sea and they have to go around, right? Increase fuel costs to get things from point A to point B. Congestion in the ports because certain ports can't be used because the Red Sea is under attack, right? It causes supply chain backups, increased prices, less supply. It's not good, right? It's supply and demand is sort of globally dependent. So chaos in the Middle East, chaos in Russia and Ukraine, it will ultimately increase prices of everything. So if you want to keep prices lower, you should have good foreign and domestic policy. And those two are linked. They cannot be extricated. And we live in a global society. Like, you can't just ignore the world, right? I'm sure everyone here likes pizza. And if you want a slice of pizza for under $27, well, you need parts from all over the world because tomatoes come from here, cheese there, things get shipped, right? Specialization, and you have a global economy and a global secure supply chain. And if the Americans are respected and strong, right, no one's going to try and shut down international shipping lanes. So you have lower prices, and then different countries can make their own trade pacts under American protection, and then again they can become more prosperous and wealthy, then trade with others, and again all prices will eventually come down in this world. But add Russia, China, and Iran to the mix and let them sow chaos across the world and attack shipping lanes and close things off and all this, you're going to get chaos and you're going to get increased prices. So if you want prices to go down, don't allow crazy rogue nations to destabilize the world.